All right, David, a couple of changes coming out of the coaching staff yesterday. Offensive line coach Daryl Funk and tight ends coach Steve Clark will not return. What's your reaction to those two coaching changes?
You know, it's tough. It's always tough when you lose coaches, right? I mean, Steve Clark, he was there when I was at BYU, a fantastic guy, and great coach as well, you know, but at the end of the day, this is a results-driven business, and the tight ends underperformed this year, and yes, there were some injuries. Offensive line struggled, as we know, you know, mainly in the run game. They had some games where they actually blocked pretty well in the pass game, but the run game was almost non-existent. And so obviously, you know, A-Rod and Kalani felt like those were the moves that need to be made. And so they moved forward with them. But it's always tough because those guys are BYU guys, and, you know, they were part of the program. But I think specifically the offensive line will be really interesting to backfill that with somebody that's going to come in and hopefully help take off some of the pressure off A-Rod's shoulders and kind of be the run game coordinator and be that guy that whenever it's 3rd and 2 or frankly 2nd and 10 and you need a good run play, A-Rod can call him up on the headset, talk to him on the headset and say, hey, what are we going with? And he'll have some plays dialed up and ready. So I think that will be a huge plus for this team moving forward, is somebody that can really handle that run game. And then, of course, try to work with this offensive line. There's going to be some turnover on this offensive line this year. Can you go out and get some guys, whether it's in the portal or develop the young guys that are already there, and try to make this offensive line much better, because it was pretty rough this year.
To me, it's a pipe dream, but Jeff Grimes is available, and he's a former coordinator here. Would he want to come back and just do the O-line? I don't know, but we know that he coaches the O-line pretty well, and he did that a few years ago. So we'll see who BYU fills with those two spots. Do you expect any other coaching changes potentially? Should there be anything else, or what do you expect?
You know, I think it'll obviously depend on who they hire as O-line coach and this run game coordinator. And maybe he feels like there needs to be another move made or so. I don't know. Obviously, leave it up to him. I think the coaches that are still there with really Fessy and Harvey, you know, I think they're obviously very capable coaches, and you know, I know both of them really well, and I think they've done a great job. Look at what Harvey's done by bringing in Aiden Robbins. They brought Rodden Brooks last year. I mean, he's done some great things at that running back room. And he dealt with some injuries this year as well, with Aiden being injured almost half the season, right? And getting LJ, who's a true freshman, ready to play. So kudos to Harvey there. And then, of course, Fessy on the receiver side of things, there was injuries there as well. And you don't have Keanu Hill, you don't have Cody Epps. And so you're trying to develop Lassiter and Marion and some of these other guys and get them to plug in. I tell you what, you go back and start thinking about the injuries this year, especially on the opposite side of the ball. There wasn't a lot of continuity there. You talk about offensive line as well. The guys were kind of banged up coming in now. And I get it. That's all of football. But it seemed like this year, more than ever, the main contributors, especially going into the season, the guys who you thought were going to be the guys, and Keanu Hill and Cody Epps, you know, they were banged up for the majority of the season. And so, you know, those coaches, they had their work cut out for them this year, trying to get those guys ready. And I think for the most part, you know, you look at the running backs, wide receivers, I think they were ready. I think a lot of it falls on the offensive line and just a lack of running game and getting any type of surge and push, which actually we saw there in the last 2 games. Finally, they started to turn it back around. So who knows? That's going to be obviously a huge emphasis going to the offseason.
Certainly those last 2 games helped Harvey-Unga and the running backs in that regard, where they had a run game at the end. Let's talk about the quarterback with Jake Retzloff. Did you see enough from him in the final 4 games? Tough games against 2, 3, 4, 5th-place teams in the Big 12 for him to be the guy going into the offseason, and/or do you expect BYU to add a transfer regardless of that position?
So I'm torn on this one. Listen, you can't hide the mistakes that Jake made, and they were terminal. Like they were lethal turnovers. And you can look back at the pick 6 against Oklahoma, et cetera. Listen, I like what I saw from him. I think he makes plays, and he's a gamer, and you can't discredit the fact that he's still young and he was still new to this offense. But, you know, ultimately, to your second question, yeah, I think you've got to go find another senior type guy. I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily a senior, one and done. I know Kalani had mentioned he does not want to do that again. But go find a more veteran quarterback that can help Jake and also push him, because maybe Jake is the best quarterback. And I don't think it's time to just push him aside, right? I mean, this is a guy who, depending on what happens with the portal, maybe he has to be your guy. Maybe BYU doesn't have too many other options. And so I don't think we discredit him or just push him aside, but I do think a more veteran quarterback that can help push him and coach him along, I think that's a huge plus. But I like Jake. I mean, yes, his throwing motion is unorthodox, and he made some mistakes. He also did some great things in the run game. He got the run game going, which I think was a tribute to him and his dual threat and the ability to make things happen with his legs. So I think if he can go in the offseason and continue to learn and go back and watch the film and say, we can't shoot ourselves in the foot like that. I can't just give up 3 points and turn the ball over. I got to protect the ball. Once again, we always talk about this. John Beck, Max Hall, those guys, they had some growing pains as well, right? I mean, all these young quarterbacks have growing pains, and I think Jake is in that same boat. He'll get better. And to your point, it was tough to kind of break him in with the toughest part of BYU's schedule, right? So you got to give him some flack there. But yeah, I'm curious to see kind of what happens. But I think adding another quarterback in this day and age, especially with quarterbacks getting hurt, look at BYU. Keaton Slovis gets injured, and you had to play Jake. So I think adding another guy is probably needs to be done.
Lest we forget, he only played in the last 4, which means he redshirted. So he still has 2 more years to play at BYU, which is wild. Okay, let's ask you about your nephews. Michael and John Henry Daly have entered the portal. Certainly we're hoping to see them as BYU Cougars and be the next David Nixon, but unfortunately they're going to move on and go elsewhere.
Yeah, listen, it was a tough decision for them. It's been a tough one for our whole family, right? I mean, these kids grew up huge BYU fans watching all this play. Ultimately, just felt like they wanted to get a different opportunity elsewhere. So we're excited for them to see where they land. Obviously, wish they would have stayed at BYU, but that wasn't in the cards, and so we support them 100%. We're excited to see where they go, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But they're both great players, and I think they're going to both have a bright future ahead of them. Kalani was great about it, and wish them the best as well. And so, that's the day of that's how college football is these days with the transfer portal. There's a lot of fluidity there, and give kids another opportunity to go explore other options. So we'll see what happens.
It is a different era, that's for sure. We're talking to David Nixon, who was a little fuzzy as you watched him on the mountain back when he played. But the quality on Zoom is now better than when you actually played on Versus on the mountain, which is crazy. Do you think you would have been drafted if you had played on ESPN, by the way?
I'd have been the #1 pick overall.
Get out of
here. Yeah. No, we joke about it all the time. The fact that when we played on Versus was like a massive step up because we were actually on HD for that week. That shows you how long ago I played. That's how desperate we were to get exposure there. Is whenever we played Versus, we're like, hey, we're stepping up to the big leagues now. Like, we're on Versus this week, guys. Get ready. But thank goodness those days are in the past for sure.
I think Versus is a hunting channel now or something. I don't even know if it still exists. The mountain.
I'm shocked it still exists.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know that. It's not on my YouTube TV list, so whatever. Okay, yeah. Defensively, where does BYU need to address and put its resources the most on that side of the ball?
Man, that's a great question. I feel like every position group had some weaknesses, and once again, injuries bit them as well. But I've been preaching this for every offseason for the last 3 or 4 or 5 offseasons. BYU has to get better at the defensive line. And I know that that's Jay Hill's emphasis going this offseason as well. He needs to get his dues there. And I know they've got some good, recruits they're looking at, some good JUCO transfers. But they've got to find a way to shore up that D line. And listen, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the guys that are here that decide to come back or not. But that it all starts with the D line, especially in this type of defense. Like, you go back and watch that West Virginia game, TCU game, Iowa State, where Iowa State and really West Virginia ran the ball at will against BYU. It all starts with that D line. They've got to be more stout at the point of contact, and you've got to get dudes that can run your system. And I'll give Jay Hill and this defensive coaching staff a pass this year because they kind of came in and inherited the guys that were already here. But moving forward, they've got to go find a way to get their guys and get the guys to perform to what they want in their system. And it's going to be a grind. I mean, that's what Big 12 is all about. It's going to be a grind year in and year out. And this year, the BYU defenses could not stop the run in critical times, and it came back to bite them. And so this offseason, they got to shore that up. Linebackers, I think BYU has a great, young nucleus of linebackers. I would like to see probably some more veteran guys come in, kind of like what BYU did with A.J. Babachan this year and brought him in. He was a fantastic addition to that linebacker room. And then safety-wise, the secondary, I like Talon Alfrey when he was healthy, what he brought to the table, getting Micah Harper back, got some young corners. It's going to be hard to miss Eddie Heckard and Garrett. There's going to be some turnover, but as there is every year with guys, you just next man up. And a lot of these young guys have been waiting their time, right? They've been waiting for their chance and opportunity. And so now's their time to shine. officially starts really yesterday and today. This is the start of a new season for these guys because there's no bowl game. So now's the time to start grinding.
The last after further review of the season is tonight at 7 Eastern time. What can fans expect?
I mean, the same thing every week. We're going to tell it like it is, right? I mean, we're going to try and show the great things BYU did, but also the not so great things. And listen, I think it's a fun show for us. And hopefully, it's a fun show for the fans to kind of take a look at, for example, on West Virginia, why BYU couldn't stop the run, and we tried to break it down and tell you why. So we'll do the same thing today. Why BYU is so stagnant there in the second half, which was unfortunate offensively, but. Yeah, it's the last one, which is honestly crazy. I think that this season is done. It flew by in a quick flash.
It's always fun, even when BYU goes 5-7. We enjoy every moment, and we look forward to the offseason, which is now upon us. David, we appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy.